Hello, this is Leo Blair. This is Dr. Young. Here on behalf of Kristen Olson's Urban Yoga Center in Palm Springs. Visit us online at urbanyoga.org or Kristen Olson's Urban Yoga Center on Facebook to check out the schedule of daily live classes on Zoom, in-person classes in Palm Springs, and stop by the tip jar where you can make contributions to support these classes we're offering on Zoom, in person, and on YouTube later. This will be a shorter video just for YouTube. And we're going to have a focused session on cow and cat pose. And we're going to start with a seated variation for cow cat, which could be done just sitting on the floor like this. You don't have to have your legs exactly like this, sitting in a way that's comfortable to you. And that can include lifting your seat. So I am partial to sitting on two blocks next to each other like this. And sitting on the forward edge of the blocks, lets your pelvis tilt forward and the front of your hips open up. So you could just sit on the floor, you could sit on something, it doesn't have to be blocks, it might be a folded blanket, a towel, a bolster, something else. So cow pose and cat pose, I like to focus on leading with the heart. And as the heart moves, that's sort of like the center of the spine. So as your heart moves forward, the top and bottom of the spine go back. As the heart moves back, the top and bottom of the spine go forward. And after the seated version, we'll get to the traditional version where you're on your hands and knees. So about the breathing, people do it in different ways. I'm partial to when moving the heart forward or down. I breathe in, and moving the heart back or up, I breathe out. Many people teach this or practice this the opposite way with the breath. I have tried it that way. I still prefer this way. So I'm a big believer in there's more than one right way. I wouldn't say they're doing it wrong. I prefer to do it this way. So from your seated position, resting your hands on your knees or your thighs. Inhaling, draw your heart forward, letting your head tip back and up. Exhale, draw your heart back, let your head tip forward and down. For me, focusing on the movement of the heart is what works best. Some folks, when they cue this, they would instead cue moving the head and tail. For me, the focus of moving the heart and just letting the curves of the spine do their thing by moving both ends of the spine, working outward from the center focus of the heart. See if you can use the whole inhale to open your heart, the whole exhale to draw back, and maybe the movements and the breaths grow longer, the repetition. Now, if you're sitting up on something, maybe for the first time doing this movement, you find you don't like it. It is a little tippy as you rock forward, and I feel like you're going to come off of what you're sitting on. You can always change your mind and remove that support from underneath. And if there's ever any issues going on in your body, you've got a particular stiffness or soreness somewhere, just adjust the degree of movement to accommodate whatever's going on. So maybe you've got something going on in your body that doesn't enjoy the feeling of a bigger full movement. You can make smaller movements. You can change the pace if you're starting into a vigorous practice and incorporating this into a more vigorous practice. You might take quicker breaths and quicker movements. Just pretending to take quicker breaths and doing some quicker movements for a moment. So another variation we can do is to add a circular aspect. Instead of just moving on this one plane, we can make circles. So as you inhale and draw your heart forward, drift to one side, come through center, exhale, drift to the other side, back through center, inhale, exhale. Maybe the circles are big, maybe they're smaller. Try to keep both sitting bones on the ground. Try to keep both cheeks in contact with what you're sitting on. There is a possibility of making a big circle and tipping over. And you might find as you get to your circles, like, you know what, with those circles, I don't like being lifted up. You'll stick work circling with my seat on the floor instead of on the blocks. At some point, change the direction of the circles. Inhale this way, exhale back that way. And again, if for you breathing the opposite way is better, go ahead and do that. Exhale as you come forward and inhale as you go back. I've tried it again and again. When I am a student in someone else's class and they cue it like that, I always give it a few breaths that way. And inevitably I come back to doing it this way. Inhale, exhale, like that. But folks who cue it the other way must have their reasons. It must feel different to them than it does to me. So my thinking and the feeling in my body is as the heart's coming forward, that's a more open movement, and as the heart's going back, that's a closing type of movement. So that's the way I tend to think about breathing. Inhale for expansive movements and exhale for contracting. We can make our way up onto our hands and knees. Look at the traditional cow and cat. So here we talk a bit more about the starting point. Starting with a square kind of shape, so your hips are above your knees. You can always add extra padding on your knees by folding up a blanket, a towel. You can even just take your mat like this, fold the edge of your mat up, so you have 2 layers of mat between your knee and the ground. If it bothers your knees, to have this pressure on them. So you can bring your shoulders above your wrists. And as Yanni's doing here, you might have blocks under your hands, if that feels better for you. Inhale, draw your heart forward. Just let your head and tailbone float up. Exhale, draw your heart up, let your head and tailbone drift down. And always follow your own breath. Maybe whoever's leading the practice, if someone's leading the practice, maybe you're practicing on your own. If you're following someone else, their breaths might be longer or shorter than yours. Yoga teachers, I think, tend to have longer than average breaths. And to add another layer to that, I've had other teachers tell me that I take really long breaths. So make sure to always say that, I think. Go crazy trying to breathe in that case. Remember using the full exhale to draw your heart up. The whole inhale to draw your heart forward. Now, traditionally, you just let the tops of your feet rest on the mat, and you might drift back and forth as your body moves. But maybe when you come to your hands and knees, you feel some tightness in your calves, or maybe even in your feet. You can bring the feet into the movement as you draw your heart forward, curl your toes under, and as you draw your heart up, flatten the tops of your feet. I really like how this feels in my calves, and some days in my feet. So we're doing something cows can't do. Cows don't have toes, but that's okay. We're not really cows. Yeah, sometimes if your feet are tight, it feels nice to tap the tops of your feet on the floor. Now, from our hands and knees, we can also do circular movements, similar to what we did from seated. It seems a little more involved with our hands and knees. But you can drift in circles, sort of working along the plane of the mat. Inhale, drift to one side, come forward. Exhale, drift to the other side, go back. So it's a little more involved. It's actually a lot more involved, I think, than the seated circle. There are more joints involved here. There's wrists and shoulders coming into this more. Bearing the weight. Certainly different dynamics in the legs here. The seated version, the legs are fairly passive, but the hips are working around. And of course, we want to change direction and take some circles going the other way too. So while we're here, some other things we might explore from hands and knees. You do nice forward and back movement that Danny's doing here, just along the length of the mat, so not a circle. We're bringing the shoulders forward past the wrists as an inhale, as an exhale, draw the heart back, bring back towards the heels. And that's another way we can do this. So it's maybe think of it as sort of drawing a three-dimensional circle or oval, or really more two-dimensional is what I meant to say, along the plane of the length of the mat. Let's come back to table. And just explore some other things we might do from this handy starting point of being on all fours. We can focus just on stretching the side body like this. Look over your left shoulder towards your left heel, look to your left heel. Inhale, come through center. Exhale, look over your right shoulder, look for your right heel. Inhale through center. Exhale, look back. And maybe your hips move too, as your head turns right, hips drift to the left, your head turns left, hips drift to the right. And as you do this, the tops of the feet can rest on the floor, or you can throw your toes under, engage the feet to stretch the feet and the calves. One other way we might play with cow and cat movement, with the toes, rather than the tops of the toes on the mat, you can sit back towards your heels or on your heels come to a kneeling position. If that is too much in any part of the body, you can change the height of your seat with a block maybe between your heels and your butt, or like standing up between your heels with the block on the floor. The rest of the blocks so you're up even higher. And like this, resting hands on your legs or even on the floor or on your blocks. Now bring your arm forward, let your head tip back. Exhale, draw your arm back, let your head tip back. That's about all the cow and cat variation that I know of. But we can look at a similar movement too, because maybe depending on what's going on in your body, it doesn't feel good to be sitting or kneeling or on your hands and knees. So we can play with bridge and floating bridge as a similar heart movement, but lying down on the ground. So we're going to come down onto our backs. I'm going to face this way just so my head's closer to the microphone. So to start into bridge pose, you lie down on your back and plant your feet with your heels as close to your butt as they'll go. Now, if you use yoga blocks, you might have one between your feet on this middle position. This is about the same distance between one hip socket and the other. So it's good to have your feet and your knees hip width apart. And you can put one between your knees and leave it there. And just to note, sometimes, for no good reason, we squeeze the heck out of this block with our knees, and that's a waste of energy. It just takes a little gentle pressure to hold it there. It's just acting as a space. Then pressing into the soles of your feet, inhale and lift your hips up, and there's bridge pose. So you're bringing your heart forward, as it were, like you did for cow pose. If you want to go into a deeper heart opener here, you have the option to wriggle your shoulder blades towards each other, clasp your hands under you, and then reach your knuckles towards your heels. Do that for as many breaths as you like, then release your hands. Exhale, slowly lower down. So the basic movement of bridge is inhale, lift your hips. Exhale, lower your hips. And you can make the movement as big or small as you want. You can pick the pace. Try to let the movement of the breath flow smoothly, continuously. You can, if you like to make it more challenging, pause at the top of the movement for some extra breath. So you can repeat that, clasping the hands, drawing shoulder blades together, the bind if you want. You can make it as challenging by taking extra breaths at the bottom of the movement, not worrying about going slower, not aiming at bigger movements, maybe smaller movements feel good in your body on a particular day. And now we move on to floating bridge. And I should say you don't have to have blocks to do this at all. You just do that same movement. Without the block between the knees, you really want to think as you lift the hips of your knees tracking towards your toes, and as you lower the hips, your knees tracking back towards the hip sockets, just so your knees stay in line. Having the block between your knees helps to make the movement stable and aligned. So for floating bridge, if you have blocks, you can hold one between your hands and rest it on the first one. And if you don't have blocks, of course, you can just rest your hands on your knees. So first, just the arm movement. You now raise your arms up overhead, let them come down behind you. So move your hands rest right on the floor. And you can take a few breaths there if you like, as we did in the first bridge movement. And exhale, bring them forward. Hands come to the knees or blocks connect. So we add that to the hip movement. And now lift your hips, roll your arms up and back. Exhale, lower your hips, hold your arms forward and down. For an extra degree of challenge, you might play with seeing if you can get your hands and your butt to land at about the same time. There's strength to be found in the slowness. Some mental clarity in the additional focus. And you can pause at the top of the movement here if you like. Again, if you want to make it more challenging, go slower, go higher, pause at the top. If you want some rest, pause at the bottom. You can pause where you like, for as long as you like. And of course, we don't want to leave out what's some people's favorite, supported bridge. So to come to supported bridge, we lift the hips, put a block under the sacrum. It can be at any height that you want. Most folks use the lower or middle height. If you're ever tempted to try resting on a block standing at the highest position, let me tell you that it might feel good when you do that, but when it's time to come out of that supported bridge, you need to lift up even higher. And in my experience, that really did not feel good. I've only done it once, and I don't think I'll ever do it again. It did not feel good at all to me. It can be helpful to think of breathing through the block. Think of sending your breath there. This helps your body to relax against the support beneath it. What feels good to your body instinctively is being on the ground and having your body held up by something else like this is instinctively kind of unsettling. Your body likes to be grounded. We're hardwired that way. And this focusing the breath on an area that's being supported helps the body to relax against that support. So this can bring about some nice release in your hips and thighs. Now with cow-cat, I talk mostly about the front movement, but the whole spine moves, the hips and shoulders move. So here, this is not much of a heart opener. My heart's not very high with this block on the low position. If I go up to second position, sure, my heart is open more. This might not feel good in the lower back, so whatever position works best for you. And the block should be right on your sacrum. And as Yanni's doing there, you can play with lifting your feet off the floor and exploring different leg positions. So that's a less active, a less passive, a more active, less passive supported bridge, or maybe that feels good in your back, in your hips. So you can play with extending your heart opener maybe into even an inversion if it feels good to have your legs up. And they might be pointed more or less straight up, or you could have bent knees. You can play with bringing your feet together, letting your knees splay out. Whenever you decide to come out of your supported bridge, take your time. Inhaling, lift up off the support, Remove the support from beneath you. Exhale, lower down. By the way, if you don't have yoga blocks, you can still do supported bridge. What you could put under you instead of a block might be a rolled out yoga mat, bolster, folded blankets or towels, pillows of any description, throw pillows, bed pillows. You can even do a low supported bridge by stacking your hands, palms down, and resting your sacrum on the back of your hand. Doesn't work for everybody, but if you're lacking any props, because I do believe you can practice any of that. You might try that, just using your hands. And yes, it often feels good after supported bridge to hug your knees to your chest and explore rocking and rolling movements. Massaging your sacrum against the floor. Any movements that you like, maybe circles, maybe side to side, maybe front to back, maybe more random. Might feel good to move your knees in opposite circles. I will generally, when I use bridges near the end of a practice, and yes, I was taught to always include, as part of the winding down, a supine twist. So from bridge, you're in a position to do simple twist with knees parallel. In any of these twists, you want to keep your shoulders on the ground. You could plant one foot, cross ankle above knee, do energizing twist, but you have to watch for where you do your blocks. You'll get in the way of the twist. Or you can take a deeper twist by crossing your knee over your other knee. And you have to watch out for how close your eyes are linked to it sometimes too. One of the many reasons to go slowly. You're sharing the space. So that concludes a little session on, well, I said at the beginning of the session on cow cat plus some other things. Thanks for tuning in. We're here. Urban Yoga is on Zoom every day, and of course, YouTube is available 24/7. Don't forget the tip jar. Check out the schedule for when you can join us live. Light within us, sees and honors the light within each of you.